The compact sports sedan is the quintessential offering for any luxury auto manufacturer. Infiniti hit a gold mine with the original G35 back in 2003. However, when the company followed it up with the replacement, the Q50, back in 2014, it had a love-hate relationship with a lot of consumers. For 2018, Infiniti has given this car a subtle refresh, probably one of the most subtle refreshes I've ever seen. But this week I'm testing out this 2018 Q50 Red Sport. Is it still worth a look if you guys are looking for a compact sports sedan? That's what we're here to find out. Style-wise, the Q50 has always been a really handsome car, which is kind of a good thing considering the fact that the old G had slightly frumpy looks from certain angles, even from the first to the second generation. For 2018, you can see this is seriously one of the most subtle refreshes I've ever seen. However, it's a very effective refresh. It takes a very good-looking sedan and elevates it and makes it even better looking. Now, all Q50s will come standard with LED headlights. They are full LEDs. They're LED low beams and high beams. It also has an LED turn signal, and they're also adaptive. They're automatic high beams, so pretty class competitive. You also have LED fog lights on the lower end, and really this is the area where you can see Infiniti made the most changes. It has a slightly different color finish where the front skirt kind of extends out a little bit further. It gives it a more aggressive look. I really like what they've done. The grille has the signature double arch feature that all Infinitis are known for. I really like the kind of wave look effect in the center of the grille. And if you guys are noticing, my tester has an optional glowing emblem, which is really interesting. It's kind of controversial. Mercedes is the one who did it first. And I actually really like it on this Q50. It looks stunning at night. I'm just not so sure the Infiniti badge kind of has the same prestige that Mercedes gives you. So it's kind of unnecessary, but it's starting to trickle down to other brands, so everyone's kind of copying it. Now, my tester being the Red Sport 400 all-wheel drive is basically the top of the stack in terms of trims. It comes standard with these 19-inch wheels, and for 2018, Infiniti updated the brake calipers. They're now painted red. They are 4 pistons. They're bigger brakes compared to the standard models. They look good, which is kind of nice because this is called a Red Sport model, and I criticized this car back in 2016 for not having enough red elements. You can also distinguish it for being a Red Sport model from this S 3-liter T badge. The standard 3-liter Ts won't have the actual S emblem there, so it's kind of important that you guys go for the Red Sport and distinguish it from the other trims. My tester also has a carbon fiber package that gives you these carbon fiber mirror caps and the carbon fiber rear spoiler, which definitely look great, especially with this pure white exterior color with the red finished brake calipers. It's just a really handsome car, and overall the Q50 is a little bit bigger than a lot of its German competitors. It stretches like around 187 inches long, and it rides on the same 112-inch wheelbase as the old G, which is kind of where this car is starting to feel a little bit old. It's just an evolution of the old FM platform that was on the G. I think it's time for Infiniti to kind of invest in an all-new platform that's a scalable platform like a lot of its competitors. Now at the rear, Infiniti also gave this car a really subtle but effective refresh. New LED taillights, they're full LEDs. They look fantastic. I think they look a lot better versus the pre-refreshed models, and I love this carbon fiber rear lip spoiler. It just is a nice, subtle, aggressive look to it. And then you can also distinguish the Red Sport models from their unique Red Sport exhaust, which kind of have these little holes that surround the actual outlets. They look good. I would kind of like to see Infiniti do a little bit more. I would like to see like a quad exhaust system and maybe a little bit even more distinction. The wheels are a little bit on the boring side for me, and I would like to see this car just kind of go the way that Mercedes has gone with the AMG models, because this competes with like an S5 or an S4 and the C43 AMG. Now, looking at the trunk capacity of the Q50, it's pretty class competitive. It has a pretty large opening, and then there's no hinges that crush your cargo, but you're looking at just under 15 cubic feet of space. The seats fold down, and they also has a little pass-through. And if you look underneath here, there's no spare tire. Infiniti instead puts run flats on this car, so you guys may want to look into adding that if that's a deal breaker for you. Q50s are incredibly well equipped, and all of them come standard with the Infiniti Smart Key Access System with push button start. My tester also has remote start. You can see here is the current Nissan Infiniti key fob. I have complained, as you guys before, that Nissan needs to replace it. It's a nice key that fits nicely in your pocket, but again, some differentiation between the Nissan key would be nice. To activate the remote start, just push the lock button once. It beeps, push and hold this top button here. And you can see it activates the remote start. The headlights actually start moving because this has the adaptive headlights. To shut off the remote start, just push and hold this button on the top here again, and that shuts off the remote start for you. Now, when you first approach your Q50, you can see on the door handles, they actually are chrome plated and they're lit on the back at night, which is definitely nice to see when you guys are approaching your vehicle in the dark. To unlock the door, just touch the back of the door handle. It has a sensor on the back that unlocks it. To lock it, just touch this door handle button here. That locks the door for you and it beeps as opposed to the honk. But as you can see here, looking at the interior of the refreshed Q50, you can see, again, very subtle changes to kind of go with the whole subtle refresh as this 18 model is going with. You can see the biggest change is that new steering wheel. It's the same steering wheel that you saw from the Q60. It's a nice steering wheel design. I also really like the updated seats. These seats are like a diamond quilted pattern, kind of similar to what Nissan puts in the top of the line Maxima. I also really like the red stitching that you get with this black interior. Again, it goes with the whole red sport theme. This is the performance-oriented Q50. It seriously needed these updates. There's a couple of features missing, however. The seat, for example, it's not cooled. It's only heated. You can get that on a Maxima, and it would be nice if Infiniti offered a pano sunroof. They don't offer on the Q50. Again, you can get those features on a Maxima. Not entirely sure why Infiniti is kind of having those gaps in the feature list here. This is a premium trim, and it needs to have those premium features. Now, stepping inside the interior, you can see the Q50 has a traditional sedan step-in height. It does feel a little bit on the lower side, which is nice. I really like, it's easy to get in and out of for me, and I like the, the feeling that it gives you, the visibility and such. Now, when you shut the door, it sounds nice and solid still. I mean, this platform is, it's getting old, but this vehicle was redesigned for 2014. Now, to start the vehicle up, all you have to do is put your foot on the brake, push this button here to fire up the engine. The steering wheel is power tilt telescoping, which is nice. It has memory seats again, which is nice. The gauges here, they're still the same gauges that I showed you on the pre-refresh model. The engine, it hasn't changed. It's still that same wonderful 3-liter twin-turbo V6. Now, looking at the rest of this interior, you can see, other than just the new seats, the new shifter, the new steering wheel, and the new stitching, everything else is hidden here is pretty much the same, which is kind of a problem. Infiniti really needs to update this interior, especially that. The head unit is just old. Let me talk about that in a second. The materials in here are decent. You have some stitching here on the dash with the contrasting red stitching. It's all soft touch. There's some textured plastic silver aluminum look trim here on the center console. The door panels also have the same material. There's some real aluminum here to accent it, and then it's soft touch here on the upper portion. It's also padded down here where your elbows will rest. One-touch automatic windows for all four. Kind of expected that again in this segment as well. The steering wheel, it's a new steering wheel. It's got these nice paddle shifters, as I said before. It's an electric power steering. Actually, it's a drive-by-wire steering system, which again is not something that has been well received in the past, but again, Infiniti has made tweaks to it in the future models. Now, looking at the center stack here, you can see this is the dual screen layout that Infiniti has introduced on this car for the last few years. I don't particularly love it. I actually appreciate how it's a little bit more flush versus what you find in the TLX, but it's still missing Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Those are features you get on a Maxima. That screen is pretty much always there, the map screen, which again, it's kind of an old navigation map graphic that dates back to 2005. This down here is a touch screen. This is actually, they're both touch screens. When you push the audio button here, you can see all your different presets are there. Going to the menu here shows you all your different apps. You can see here, there's your drive mode selector. It has a couple of driving performance apps, but again, no apps that you really care about. I mean, you have Bluetooth streaming, you have Sirius satellite radio. The touch response is okay, but again, I'm just not terribly happy with this. It just doesn't feel premium enough to me. Some elements of this cabin, again, just keep reminding me of a Nissan interior, which is not great. Your heated seat control is down here. It's got an automatic setting and then a 3-level high, mid, and then low, and then off setting, of course. Again, where's the cooled seats? I'd like to find that, especially at this price point. You can also control the navigation screen from this controller dial here if you guys don't want to use the touchscreen, because I hate getting fingerprints all over the touchscreen. It has a couple of dedicated buttons here. This vehicle does have a 360 camera, which is nice. It has moving object detection, which is kind of like rear cross traffic alert, and it has some sensors. It's a decent sized camera, decent graphics. You kind of seen it before on other Nissan Infiniti products. This right here is your drive mode selector.
It defaults to standard mode, or you can also flip it around and it will change to like a personal, a sport plus, or there's also an eco mode or a snow mode. So again, I'm going to show you guys primarily driving modes in Sport Plus. It's a pretty nice driving vehicle. This controls the 7-speed automatic transmission. It's the only transmission available. It has a manual mode here, or you can use the paddle shifters as well. There's two cup holders right here. This is nice and padded. It's decent storage. You can see there's 2 USB ports and then an aux port in there, and then the SD card for your navigation map. The sunroof is, again, they're standard. It's not the big pano sunroof, but at least it is standard. And then when you look at the glove compartment here, it's damped, it's lined with felt, it's a decent size. And then the seats are also relatively comfortable. I like the fact that Infiniti puts, this kind of thigh extension here. That's what pretty much everything else in this segment has, especially with the sports sedan. They're also nicely bolstered. I like the new diamond quilted accents as well. I mean, overall, the interior is definitely the weakest link of this car. You buy it really for the engine and the all-wheel drive grip. It's not a horrible interior, but I really think that I prefer the interior of the new TLX now, because at least it has Apple CarPlay, and I think the Lexus feels a little bit more luxurious, and the Germans just honestly blow the interiors away of the Japanese. But for me, the interior of the Infiniti is definitely the weakest element here. The rear seat of the Q50 is also on the smaller side, even though this vehicle does have a longer wheelbase. I found that when I had the seat back further for a taller driver, it really took up all the rear seat legroom. This is where I'd have the seat to drive. Now, stepping back here, you can see it kind of has like a stadium style seating. I feel that the bench is a little bit higher on this, or in the rear seat versus the front. And then when you shut the door, it sounds as solid as the front doors, which is nice. Same materials, so they did carry that over here. There are 2 map pockets right there. There's some vents right here. A little bit of storage. Actually, it's an ashtray here, which is kind of old school a little bit there. There's a nice armrest here with another pass-through. The seats, they fold down 60/40, which is nice. And then there's some cup holders right here, but no heated rear seats. So in terms of some of the features, no like sunshades here that kind of pull up, no power sunshade here. So again, there's some features in the rear seat that it's lacking that some of its competitors have basically included, especially at this price.
Now, under the hood, this is where Infiniti got interesting back in 2016, and things haven't really changed. It didn't need to. This is the top spec engine. It's the company's all-new 3-liter twin-turbo V6, part of the VR engine family. Kind of similar to what the engine we find in the GTR, but slightly different. Nissan, or Infiniti, says it's a lot of different parts versus the GTR's motor. But in the Q50 Red Sport, it makes the same 400 horsepower that we love and we know, and 350 pound-feet of torque. This is the best engine in the Japanese segment. The Acura doesn't offer anything like this, and Lexus hasn't offered something like this yet, although we did see a new twin-turbo V6 in the LS 500. Now, it all goes out through a 7-speed automatic transmission. That's your only transmission choice. I kind of wish Infiniti would do a manual again. It's probably the weakest link in this car is the 7-speed automatic. Now, you can take your pick between rear or all-wheel drive like my Tester. It weighs around just under 4,000 pounds, so pretty heavy car, and gas mileage is rated at 19 city, 26 highway. Infiniti says you need to put premium gas in it. It's a luxury sports sedan, but let's get out on the road and see how it all performs. So you guys know that I love the sports sedan segment. In fact, when I first drove the Q50 Red Sport 2 years ago when this motor first came out, I was blown away. It's the best performing Japanese sports sedan engine in the segment, way better than the naturally aspirated engine in the TLX and the Lexus IS350. However, the Q50 hasn't really always delivered that entire package. It has a ballsy engine, but everything else about it to me has always been a little bit lackluster. But how does the refreshed model drive? Well, I have to say, driving it out on the highway here, this is probably where most of you are going to be driving these sports sedans. And the Q50 soaks up this kind of environment easily. I mean, it's got plenty of power. I have it in its Sport Plus setting right now, and when you put your foot down, it seriously has so much power, you can easily overtake anybody. And a lot of people forget that this car competes with a BMW 340i, an Audi S4, a Mercedes AMG C43, and this has more horsepower than all of those competitors that I basically talked about. So what gives? Why does the Q50 not have that same kind of, status symbol as those. And I think it has to do a lot with the styling, which Infiniti tried to rectify this year by making it a little bit more aggressive. To be honest, it could still use a little bit more tweaks here to kind of elevate this car to a true performance car status. However, you know, when you're just cruising along the road here on the highway, the Q50 is a really nice luxury sedan to drive. It's pretty quiet in here. It's very smooth. The steering, you know, this has the direct adaptive steer technology, which I'm still not completely in love with, but I am in love with the power, especially when you do this. This thing seriously is fast. Infiniti says it'll get to 60 in like 4.5 seconds. And this will keep pace with all of the competitors that I pretty much, you know, talked about. Now, when you do get it up to highway speeds, the wind noise in here, I hear it creeping in. The road noise from these tires also, it kind of creeps in a little bit. There's just certain elements of the car that just doesn't deliver that whole package. The ride also is something I want to talk about because it's a little bit on the firmer side, if I'm being honest. Especially, you know, considering this is also a luxury sedan, I'm going to put it the drive mode selector into standard, and it really just affects the steering, the throttle position, the transmission tuning. The ride isn't really affected because this doesn't actually have adaptive suspension, but it just has plenty of power and torque, and the engine also makes a pretty nice noise. What really is the weakest link about the Q50 is the transmission. This 7-speed auto is definitely starting to get behind in the times. Now, how does it compare to, let's say, the 8-speed or the 9-speed auto in the TLX? I will say the Acura's transmission, despite it being very, very reluctant to shift at times, I think is actually a better transmission than the 7-speed. This transmission, to me, it just doesn't match the character of this engine. This engine really would do wonders if it was matched up with a dual clutch, if it was matched up with a manual transmission. But again, Infiniti isn't really doing that, but it's seriously got so much FU power, that's what I call it, because it's just so ridiculous how quick this thing is. It'll just kind of blow you away the first time you put your foot down in this car. It's just super incredible. Now, one thing I also want to talk about is the driver assistance features in this car, because my car has basically all the autonomous stuff that Infiniti has become known for. It's got predictive forward collision alert, it's got lane departure prevention assist. This car will basically kind of use its radar sensors to sense like 2 car lengths ahead if there's an impending collision. And one thing that really confuses me, that surprised me honestly about the Q50, is when you have all of the modes turned on, when you actually turn everything on, this car will actually hit the brakes for you automatically. For example, this car is coming to a stop, and I'm not hitting the brakes, but it's automatically slowing down for me, even though I don't have the adaptive cruise control on. If I try to tailgate the person, so if you're trying to drive aggressively, this will actually push back on the accelerator, it'll beep, it'll slam on the brakes, it'll interfere violently. That's something that you kind of have to get used to, and it can be very annoying. Luckily, there's a button right here on the steering wheel that shuts it all off. It'll still beep at you, but it won't kind of so aggressively intervene if you guys are driving like a jerk, basically. But I mean, overall, as a luxury sedan, this is kind of not quite there yet. As a sports sedan, it has the ballsy engine, but it's missing the entire chassis feel. The steering, it's that direct adaptive steer, which is just, I'm not liking the way it feels. It doesn't give me much confidence when I'm behind the road, and it's just kind of a strange video game-like sensation, a disconnected feel, basically. Because this car has so much power, it will spin those all 4 wheels, even though I have all-wheel drive. These tires, if I'm being honest, they're like run-flat tires. I'm not really in love with them. They don't really grip the road. I really want to drive a rear drive model, because that will have staggered with rear tires. These are 245s around. But I mean, this is a pretty fun sports sedan in a straight line. It's just when you start kind of attacking some roads, some twisties. I've driven much better feeling sports sedans. The Lexus has better steering feel. The Acura's chassis feels a little bit more composed. The Alfa Giulio really is the benchmark for me. That has the best steering, the best feel. You can really feel the body lean in this car. It just doesn't really like, you know, that the transition motions, not like the old G did, and that's the main difference. The old G was basically a BMW. It was like the Japanese BMW, incredibly direct steering, really willing engine, really, you know, great manual transmission, and the 7-speed at the time was a great transmission, but, you know, the 8 speeds have just seriously surpassed it. But I mean, overall, I think Infiniti is trying to find their mojo again. It's trying to find what made them great, but there's just certain elements about this car that are kind of just halfway stepping stones, and I would really love to see the company, just drive the new Giulia. That's really the chassis dynamic and handling they need to benchmark, and if they can do that and, put it in the next generation model, I think Infiniti would seriously have a winner. So as you guys saw on the test drive, the Q50 is still one very fun sports sedan to drive, especially when you guys go for the 400 horsepower engine. I mean, what's not to love when your car has 400 horsepower? That's 100 more than all the other Japanese competitors, and really in line with all of the German spec competitors like the Audi S4, the Mercedes AMG C43, and the BMW 340i. Now, with that being said, the refreshed Q50 definitely has some nice touches to it. I really like the styling changes they've done. It's still a handsome sports sedan. Love the carbon fiber look with the white and the red calipers. It's definitely one of the better looking sedans in the segment. But with that being said, this is a sports sedan, and that's where the Q50 kind of falls a little bit short. It has the power and acceleration I'm looking for, but the direct adaptive steering still isn't where it needs to be in terms of feel, in terms of engagement. There are times where I seriously felt like I was driving a video game, and I just wish the car had a more connected feel. Infiniti made its name known for themselves as the Japanese BMW with the original G, and this to me just doesn't feel like that. Now, the chassis is definitely getting a little bit old, and you kind of notice it again. It doesn't feel quite as solid as some of the other competitors, even some of the Japanese competitors like the Lexus IS. But overall, this has the best engine, and Infiniti has some pretty crazy deals if you guys do want to get one of these cars. Now, what's it going to cost to get you one of these Q50s? They start around $33,000 for a base 2-liter turbo. That's probably not the one you want. The 3-liter T is really the bargain of the segment. That one starts at around $38,000, $39,000 for that model. The Red Sport 400, like this particular one, starts at about $50,000. Add $2,000 if you guys want all-wheel drive. Now that sounds like a lot of money, and it gets even worse than that. My tester pretty much has all the options you can spec on it. It's got a sport package. It's got the direct adaptive steer with the driver assistance package, which Infiniti has changed the naming for 2018. And all in, my testers are stickering for around $61,000, plus that $1,500 for the carbon fiber exterior package. That definitely sounds like a lot of money. It's pretty much right in line with what you can get for a fully loaded German competitor, and more expensive than the Lexus and the Acura. But I will argue that the Infiniti has the best engine that can kind of keep it in line with all of the German competitors. However, even though the price is so high, I have seen Infiniti dealers discount this car by as much as $10,000, and the lease is really aggressive. You can lease this exact car on Infiniti's website for like $450 a month for 3 years, which is a really big steal, honestly. The German competitors are easily going to be twice the price. With all that said, I would like to see Infiniti, go back to their roots with a sports sedan. I'd like them to fix the steering and make it even more responsive, kind of give it that Japanese BMW feel. I'd like to see them return to a manual, and they really need to replace the 7-speed automatic. It's seriously the weakest link in this car. It just doesn't shift with the aggressiveness, with the speed and the smoothness of a lot of the newer 8 and 9 and even 10-speed transmissions that are coming to market. But I hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on this 2018 Infiniti Q50 Red Sport all-wheel drive. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, make sure you follow me on Instagram at Redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and if you haven't done so, please subscribe to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I'll catch you all in the next video.